No revolution for you, no revolution for you, no revolution for you, no revolution for you. Ha 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 ha. So this is July the 18th. It is Thursday, and this is The Drill. Thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today. And my podcast is about demonstrating how to beat the left each and every day. And it's made possible by Spreaker.com. It can be heard on iTunes, Spotify, Google, and YouTube. My email address is storytimes@hotmail.com. I'm on Twitter @RonaldHardgrove and on Facebook @The Drill. So I started my socio-political odyssey as a conservative Republican. I was taught by the left that I was conservative because of where I stood on the issues, which sounded reasonable. One of the other things was that I was a pseudo-conservative in that I voted conservative, but I lived like a lefty. I had a rather hedonistic lifestyle. You know, I worked for the weekend, so to speak. So go out and work, and then on Friday and Saturday nights, I'm out partying and having a good time. So, but I was taught by the left again where I stood on the issues was where I stood politically, which sounded reasonable. But the only way that the right is going to win the battle with socialism is from the ground up. Each conservative has to win the arguments with the socialists in his or her life, at the soccer field, the grocery store, at work, or even at church. So, but whenever I engaged a liberal in a debate when I was beginning as a conservative, I found that I couldn't win. And I soon figured out that the issues were fallacy that only appeared reasonable, but were in reality a trap. And the issues were created by the left for the left. So is there any way for a conservative to win? Yes, by redefining what it means to be a conservative, by redefining the word conservative. I will not only win, but I will never lose. And the purpose of my podcast is to demonstrate how to defeat the left each and every day. So one of the ways that you defeat the left is by acting conservative. Quit aping the left. Quit communicating the way the left communicates. Quit acting the way the left does. And you will have integrity. And that's one of the most important things you can have is, again, walk your talk. Like I figured out finally, after being a hedonist outside the voting booth and a conservative inside the voting booth, at a certain point I reached a crisis point in my life where I realized I got to get my act together. And I got to make up my mind. I'm either one or I'm the other. If I'm going to be a lefty, then fine. Then I will vote left and live left. If I'm going to be a conservative, then I have to not only vote conservative, I have to live that way. So, and that's what I decided to do. So one of the ways that in which you live it also is don't defend people you don't know. One of the cultural trends in our country, one of the first things you need to know is understand that politics doesn't inform or shape our culture. It doesn't work that way. It starts with philosophy, which shapes our culture. Culture shapes our politics. That's the way it progresses. So Rush Limbaugh and everybody else, all the other pundits, approach it backwards. They think that if they can convince enough people to vote conservative and we put enough conservatives into office, that our culture will then go ahead and somehow automatically change. No. We're not going to have any conservatives put into office if we don't have a conservative culture to begin with. Okay, there'll be, and those people that call themselves conservative will not, once they get into office, will turn out to be rhinos. We're experiencing a lot of that. People say, "Oh yes, I'm going to vote for to be tough on illegal immigration. I'm going to overthrow Obamacare. We're going to change that, and we're going to put in a better system." And then when they get into office, what happens? Nothing. Because when they do their polls, when they get into office, and they look at the cultural attitudes of Americans, they find out that America is center-left, not center-right. And they realize that if they're going to get reelected, that they're going to have to basically give up on the idea of putting up a fence or a wall, or basically give up on keeping their campaign promises. So one of the cultural habits that the left has created in this country is the idea of defending people. There's a slogan that goes, everybody's has some kind of a problem, or everybody's suffering from something, and which is BS. But the idea is don't judge. It's just another variation of the don't judge slogan, okay? Because they're trying to suggest that you don't know what they're going through, that maybe there's a good reason for them to act snotty, or maybe they've just gone through a round of chemotherapy or whatever. That's what it's intended to suggest. And it's intended, number one, to put you in check, keep your mouth shut, but it's also intended to get you to act like make you easier to lead. The left is fascinated with leadership. The right is interested in representation, because the right supports the rights of the individual. Each individual decides for themselves every day what they're going to do, so therefore each individual is looking for what in Washington? Representation. The left looks at Washington as a means of power, as a way of leading the American people in the way and to do the things that the left thinks that they need to have done, and in the way that they think that people need to live. So again, to that end, they have excuses for everything. So you'll encounter when you're talking to your friends, for instance, and you're talking, let's say, about your boss. Okay, my boss really sucked today. He was on my case about this, that, or the other thing. And your friend may say to him, well, maybe he's not feeling well today. Maybe he has the flu. Maybe his wife didn't give him any sex. Maybe, and there's all kinds of maybes there. Okay, first of all, your friend doesn't know your boss at all. And what they're in effect doing is taking your boss's side. Because you notice that what they're not doing is because they're making excuses for the boss. And again, making excuses for somebody they don't even know. And they're not making excuses for you. Okay, but you'll notice that if you challenge them and ask them, well, why are you taking my boss's side, they'll deny it. And they'll get hot about it. I'm not taking his side. Because they don't think that that's what they're doing, even though in reality that's exactly what they're doing. Now, you may have gotten in the habit of doing that too. You have certain friends, certain social circles, and if everybody in your social circle is in the habit of making excuses for other people, you may get in the habit of doing the same thing. Don't. Resist the habit of doing that. Part of the point of having any relationship, whether it's a friendship or a marriage, is loyalty. Okay? You associate with certain people because you like them, because you have certain things in common, and also because they have one thing that very few people on the left want to talk about: character. Because you trust them, because they're reliable, because they are, and also they're smart, they're athletic, they are reliable, they are trustworthy, they are thrifty, and all the various different character attributes that attract people to them. Okay, they're reliable, they're solid, good, solid person, not just personality. Very often today, when you hear people being described, they're being described by their personality. Oh, well, he has a big smile. He would light up the room when he came into the room. He always had a joke. He always made you feel better. Who cares? Dogs get a better send-off than that. Because very often you'll hear this in eulogies. His smile lit up the room. So what? Doesn't tell me anything about him. Was he trustworthy? You can also use some of Aristotle's ideas, ethical ideas, and ask the question, was he continent? In other words, he was tempted to do wrong, but he didn't do it. Or was he incontinent? He was tempted to do wrong, and more often than not, he would give in to temptation. Was he vicious? Did he regularly engage in vice? Maybe he was virtuous. He did the right thing, and he did it because it was right to do. Not necessarily because it was to his advantage, not because the ends justify the means, but he did right because it was right to do right, that kind of thing. Highly unlikely, but maybe he was superhuman, so he's even beyond that. Or maybe he was beyond vicious and was bestial. Their murderers and whatnot can be described as bestial. Certainly vicious, but very possibly bestial. So having the character, dealing with people's character, and knowing people is very important, not just dealing with their personalities, important to being and living like a conservative. Another thing is that don't quit using left-wing jargon. How many times do I hear conservatives that refer to Ms. Cortez or Representative Cortez as AOC? AOC is left-wing jargon. It's something that was created by the news departments, by CNN, MSNBC. Don't do that. Don't go to that place. There's all kinds of jargon that the left likes to use, and that the right has a tendency, the conservatives have a tendency to get insecure and think they have something to prove to everybody. You don't. You have nothing to prove to anyone. The left has things that they need to prove. And let them go ahead and do their little cute little jargon and whatnot. Stay away from it. Stay away from left-wing jargon. Another thing you can do, give your opinion. If you're asked by your friends to offer up an opinion. I had a friend once that came to me and asked me about whether it was wise for him to marry the woman he married. That there was two women, one that he married, one that was his girlfriend before he met his wife, that he didn't marry. He explained the relationship that he used to have with this former lover, and that she and he ended up breaking up. She wanted to get married. He wasn't so sure. And I told him, he says, did I do the right thing? And I said, yes, absolutely. And I explained why. And he told me something very interesting. He said that that I was the only person that he had asked that gave him a straight answer. Everybody else hemmed and hawed and BS'd their way through it. And it made sense to me, because most people have been taught that what is real is what the majority says is real. So if you're going to try and figure out what to do, you have to go out and conduct a poll or a survey. You call up all your friends and say, hey, I've got this situation. I've been offered a job. Let's take that as an example. I've been offered a job. Should I take it? But you're going to get a mealy-mouthed answer from all of your friends. Why? Because they don't know either until they've conducted their own polls and surveys. They got to call their friends and say, well, Joe just called me up and asked me whether or not he should take a job that he's been offered. So I wasn't really terribly sure, so I told him blah, 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 blah. What do you think? But the person he's asking doesn't know either, because they haven't conducted their survey. So you end up with a situation where nobody, even though probably each person in that chain knows whether or not it was a good idea for him to take the job, they don't want to say so. They don't want to say so without checking with somebody else first. In essence, getting permission from somebody else to go ahead and say, yes, Joe, it was a good idea to take the job. And I told this guy, yes, it was a good idea for you to walk away from that woman, marry somebody else. And I told him why. And I didn't check with anyone else first. So again, act like a conservative. Walk the talk. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about was Trump rallies. I wanted to make note of the fact that one of the shrewdest things that Trump does is have rallies. He's been having rallies ever since he was elected. I was anticipating that the rallies would subside, that he would, like most presidents, you do the rallies when you're running for office or re-election, but once you're elected, then you kind of let that go by the wayside. He's never stopped. He always has rallies. And I realized that why it's such a good idea, not only for President Trump, but for the rest of us that support President Trump. And the reason being is he takes a beating. We take a beating every day in the news. Every time you turn on the news. I was sitting in California Pizza Kitchen. They happen to have on CNN. And again, on and on about the House of Representatives and their vote to disapprove something that Donald Trump said or whatever. And CNN referred to his remarks as racist. Didn't explain how they drew that conclusion. They just presented it as a self-evident primary, as though it was axiomatic, and wrong of them to do so. But the point is, then you got to listen to that or see it on the screen, and you take a bit of a beating. We all do, and President Trump does. And so you wonder, how does President Trump deal with all this constant negative crap that comes from the news media and from others, from people in Congress like Representative Cortez? Have a rally. And he goes out, he has a rally, he's got people, he sells out, he gets 50,000 people into a 20,000 seat arena, and it is a party. He understands the value of celebration. And basically that's what these rallies are, a celebration of his presidency, his election, a celebration of the people that put him there, a celebration of America itself. And so when I hear about the rallies and I listen to clips from the rallies, it picks me up. If it weren't for those rallies, I might have given up on President Trump a long time ago. Because as much as I should stick to my principles and whatnot, you can only take so much pounding. And a lot of what the left is doing vis-a-vis Donald Trump is trying to punish the electorate. They're trying to say, okay, you voted for Donald Trump, well now here's payback. And we're going to hammer you every single day to punish you for voting in somebody like that, in the hopes that we're not going to reelect him, number one, and number two, that we will never even think about electing somebody like Donald Trump again in the future. And so far, I think it looks as though it's going to fail. So I'm going to take a break, and when I come back, a little bit of the Ayn Rand lexicon and the definition of the day. Thank you very much. Welcome back. And from the Ayn Rand lexicon, the definition of the day, which is integrity. Integrity is the recognition of the fact that you cannot fake your own consciousness, just as honesty is the recognition of the fact that you cannot fake existence. That man is an indivisible entity, an integrated unit of two attributes, of matter and consciousness, and that he may permit no breach between body and mind, between action and thought, between his life and his convictions. That, like a judge, impervious to public opinion, he may not sacrifice his convictions to the wishes of others. Be it the whole of mankind shouting pleas or threats against him, that courage and confidence are practical necessities. That courage is the practical form of being true to existence, of being true to truth, and confidence is the practical form of being true to one's own consciousness. The virtue involved in helping those one loves is not selflessness or sacrifice, but integrity. Integrity is loyalty to one's convictions and values. It is the policy of acting in accordance with one's values, of expressing, upholding, and translating them into practical reality. If a man professes to love a woman, yet his actions are indifferent, inimical, or damaging to her, it is his lack of integrity that makes him immoral. Integrity does not consist of loyalty to one's subjective whims, but of loyalty to rational principles. And one of the things I was talking about in terms of loyalty was loyalty to another person. If you're going to call somebody a friend, you need to exhibit a certain amount of loyalty. If you're going to marry somebody, that is the ultimate expression of loyalty. The left doesn't like loyalty, personal loyalties, and the left has worked to undermine personal loyalties for decades. They started by telling women, oh, you don't have to be loyal to your man. You can, and they came up with the idea of no-fault divorce. And so that a woman, whenever on a whim, she can decide, you know what, I'm sick of you, I want a divorce, I want out of here, I want out of this marriage. So, but ultimately that's what is, and some people think I can be married, but I can, again, take the side of people I don't even know. When my husband comes home and he's complaining about his boss, he's complaining about this, that, or the other situation that's going on, or he's maybe laughing at somebody. There's somebody at work that did something stupid, and he's trying to relate how stupid that was. I can sit there and start making excuses for this person and taking this person's side, even though I've never met them, and still expect to have a happy marriage. No, it's not going to happen. The other thing with this is that she was talking about here is fake existence. Integrity is a recognition of the fact that you cannot fake your consciousness, and of the fact that you cannot fake existence. And what is it that one of Hillary Butch Clinton's favorite slogans, fake it till you make it. So what does that say about Hillary Clinton's integrity or lack thereof? Back in a minute. Thank you very much. Welcome back. So who are the true conservatives? They are the people that understand that conservatism is not just political, but cultural as well. They're patriotic people who use common sense. They make judgments instead of predictions. They speak clearly and definitively and are not afraid to say no. They are open-minded, asking why rather than why not. They're consistent, credible, and influential. Not ashamed of their existence, unafraid to learn or correct their mistakes. They are normal Americans. And that brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.